Hey guys, what's up? Designer Gem, and today we are going to design a laser cut table centerpiece. This is a tutorial, so I'm going to try to go through this thing from start to finish in the different programs that I'm using. Right now you can sort of see I'm in a cool drawing program called Leonardo. I'm just going to use this to pretty much sketch some things. We're going to jump into INKSCAPE, and that's where we will do pretty much most of the design. We're not going to make it in this video, but I might do that in another video. We will see. So today's tutorial, it's all about designing this laser cut centerpiece, and I was thinking really just to use sort of simple text for the sake of this video. This can be done, you know, using all sorts of different kinds of graphics and things like that, because the main thing about this is just really how to sort of connect it together. So we're going to do some sort of text, and it's just going to stand up. Imagine if I wanted to have some text that's going to stand on a table or whatever it is. So now when we're thinking about this, this is pretty much the design. We need to have some way to actually keep it vertical, right? So in order to do that, we're pretty much going to make some sort of brace that's going to connect underneath the letters, and then we're going to give it some sort of base that's going to have some sort of slot in it so that this text can sort of sit inside there and, you know, look cool. When we're making this, you could, if you wanted to, look at this tutorial, and you could design each letter individually, but we're going to design all the letters together, just to sort of reduce. We're going to merge them all together so we can reduce the amount of the number of pieces that we actually have to deal with. We're going to use a press fit assembly with this, which basically means that we're going to try to design this in a way that the whole thing will fasten together without using too much or any glue or adhesives other than just the pressure and the friction of the pieces fitting together themselves. In practicality, that may work, but sometimes you might want to include a little bit of adhesive or whatever it is, but that's neither here nor there. That's not really part of this exercise. I'm going to show you how to do it, you know, without that today. Now, if you're thinking about this, imagine if I did design this text, and as I said, we're going to sort of try to keep all these letters together so that we can reduce the number of letters and the number of pins and slots that we're going to have to make. You're going to have to make, as I said, some sort of brace here. Now, this, to be honest with you, I think might take away from the look of the graphic itself, like the graphical portion of this. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to see in this design, we're going to see if we can hide this piece here, this lower portion right here, this brace that's going to be connecting all these letters together in our design. We're going to see if we can hide that within the base here so that you don't have to see it, and then sort of looks like the text is just standing on its own. Of course you'll have the base, but you know, that's neither here nor there. As far as well, you know what? Let's just jump right into INKSCAPE, and let's actually get this party underway here. So it's very important when you're starting to understand the material that you're working with when you're designing an INKSCAPE, especially for laser cutting. The reason for that is the pins and slots that we'll make are going to be dependent on the material that we're going to be using, and especially the thickness of the material. That's going to be one of the biggest things that we're going to have to take into account. So it's important to know actually the thickness of your material. Now, if you don't know the thickness of the material, you can, you know, use a pair of calipers to sort of measure it beforehand. And this design we're going to be doing is going to be a little bit general, so I say a 1/4 inch. That's pretty much the nominal thickness of the material that I'll be using. But you know, if you're really trying to get a super clean fit, you know, you could actually measure whatever material that you're using first, the thickness, and then use that as the parameter to work off of. But so look at this. This right here is our simple text that we're going to be using. The first thing that you'll do, and I like to do this. You can do this now. You can do it later, but I like to do it now. Is just go ahead and set the size of your page that you'll be using, and you're going to set this to the actual dimension of the material that you're going to be using. And the reason we do this is because, first of all, you want to basically understand how much material you have to work with. Each of these, well, this page sort of represents the cutting area, and so this can help you to sort of identify and not make your design too big, or hey, we can't even theoretically make this in one piece as we're designing it on this in this size. So we're gonna so it's good to have this material here to sort of give us our parameters. Also, when you're actually aligning all your parts up and preparing for cutting, it becomes important, because that way you can actually, you know, arrange them on the sheet here and understand pretty much where everything will cut, and it's gonna make your material cutting experience more efficient and faster and all of that. Now, without further ado, let's get into the thick of things here. I picked this text. I thought it was a good looking text. When you're selecting something like this that we're going to laser cut, you probably want to select some sort of text that doesn't have doesn't have a lot of floating parts. You know, let me show you an example here. Let's say if I did a lowercase I. As I said, this is going to be vertically just sort of standing text, and I'll have this piece here that's sort of, you know, sitting on nothing. It's going to be, this will cut out as two separate pieces, and unless I'm going to go ahead and make, you know, some sort of, you know, piece that's going to connect it, you know, this piece will be separate from the rest of what I'm designing, and I don't really want that, and I don't really want to get in to actually doing that. So I just selected everything and put it in all capital letters so that I don't have to deal with any of that. So for actually, let's say if I have this text or whatever graphic I'll be working with, let's get started and let's actually put some sort of connection piece, some sort of brace that's going to go underneath these letters. And I want to line this brace pretty much up with the bottom edge of all this text. And by the way, this is another sort of important thing to remember. And imagine if I did design this without all caps. I just say welcome, and let's say I had a random letter like a J or a G or something like that. You can sort of see that trying to line this bottom part of the letters is going to be pretty difficult, because as you can see, this J here extends far below the bottom edge of most of those letters. So I would have to put my brace down here somewhere, and then I'm going to end up connecting these like probably like this, and now this design's only being really supported by just this piece right here, this lower portion right here, which, to be honest with you, is not the strongest design to make. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to go ahead and keep everything in capital letters. Now let's actually go ahead and let's set this size for this part here. I kind of want this to be 11 inches wide. Okay. And as far as my height goes, I want it to be 2 inches tall. And by the way, some text, some fonts work well for, you know, stretching them, you know, past the aspect ratio that they're originally designed in. This font looks pretty good, you know, at a variety of widths, you know, relative to a single sort of height parameter. But we're just gonna keep it 11 here. Some work with this, some will really get distorted. You try to change the size like that. So be careful with whatever text that you're selecting if you're going to use this. I'm going to go ahead and take this brace, and we're going to make it pretty much the exact same width as our text. And in Inkscape, you can arrange things and align things. You can probably do this in most other programs as well. And I'm just going to go here, and we're going to align this brace to along the vertical axis, centered on the vertical axis of my text. Now, you can sort of see this brace here. It looks, you know, it looks okay, but it looks like my text has been underlined now. Let's say I don't want this text to be underlined. So what I'm going to try to do is, in this design, we're going to try to hide this part right here. We don't really want to see it. It's going to sort of be incorporated into the base in a way that this right here is flush. This part right here is going to be flush with the surface of the base, so we don't actually see it protruding, sticking up at all. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to actually set the height for this. I'm going to set the height of this brace to be 0.5 inches. Again, I'm saying 0.5. All I'm really saying is 2 times the thickness of my material. And there's a reason for that. I want this text right here to be 1/2 inch thick. So into this page, like if I were to go into the page, I'd be going in 1/2 inch. And in order to do that, that basically just means we're going to have 2 layers of this of this text. And in order to maintain this whole press fit situation that we want to have going on here, we're going to need to connect these in some sort of way, connect both layers actually in some sort of fashion. And we're going to use press fit. We're going to use sort of a pin and sort of socket situation. And because we're working with a base that has to be made out of the same kind of material, this is going to be, the base is going to be in multiples of the thickness of the material that we're working with. So this is going to be 2 times the thickness of the material, and we're going to put a slot right here. Let's see this here. Slot's going to go right there. Now, again, this slot, we're going to set the slot to the same height as the thickness of my material, so 0.25. And this width here is kind of arbitrary. We can make it, let's make it about there. That looks okay. I'm happy with that. Let's put it right there. I'm gonna make another one of these. I'm gonna move it over there. By the way, in Inkscape, if you hold Control and try to move an object, it just moves it along a single axis, and that's nice because I don't have to worry about. You can see I have it moves it vertically here. I can move it horizontally, and that means I don't have to go ahead and line it. I know that these 2 things are still lined up. This thing is like just, you know, this is only moving the y-axis or the x-axis in this case. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to group these guys together. I'm going to center them, put them right in the middle of my brace, and I'm going to center them also in the horizontal axis. Horizontal and vertical axis, we're going to center them. Now we have this situation going on here. Pretty much, this looks pretty good. I'm looking at this now though, and I see that, like, like we want this text to float as much as possible. I don't really want to see any of this brace. I want to see as little of the brace as possible. And as you can sort of see here, we have probably about a good ½ inch or more of space here. Yeah, more than ½ inch. Probably about almost, you know, about 0.6 of an inch here. That is going to be exposed as part of the brace. It's going to be going into our base. So what we're going to end up doing is, I'm just going to go ahead and change that size just a little bit. Let's actually make it, let's make it go to right there. I like that. That's fine. I'm going to look at this E over here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move that just to there. That looks a little bit better. I'm pretty happy with that. And now what we're going to do, now we have to actually, we need to adjust the size of this, because now, look at that, that's right there. And this is a very thin area now that we're having to work with here. I don't like that. I want to move this in. This is to give our piece a little bit more strength, a little more rigidity. Just like so. I like that. I'm going to take these, I'm going to rearrange them on the vertical axis, center them on the vertical axis, and relative to the to this brace that we have going on here. Looks pretty good. In fact, though, I'm gonna move this farther. I'm gonna move that right to there. There we go. Looks a little better. Same thing going on. I don't know if you can hear my computer. My computer's just blowing up right now. Yeah, my computer's pretty labor intensive for this. I got this computer back in like 2013 or something. It was a really great computer when I got it, and now, you know, it's, I don't know, past its prime or something. I don't know. Now that we have all these, we're gonna move this up a little bit. If you can see here, there's a space, there's a gap between the underneath the E and a bunch of the other letters. I don't like that. I'm gonna move this up just a little bit, just so it overlaps. In fact, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the color of this just so I can see the difference, and I'm also gonna send it to the bottom. Sort of see here, it send it to the bottom. Move it up just a little bit, just so we know it's overlapping. By the way, this is a great font because the bottom of most of these letters are very flat. That means that we can have minimal overlap, except that we have to worry about this O and this C that aren't flat. So we're gonna have to make sure that there's enough material in contact with this brace that it's going to give it some sort of security, and it's not going to break if I were to touch those letters when I actually manufacture this. I'm gonna shift this up just a tad bit more, until I'm happy with the amount of real estate we have overlapping on both those letters. I like it. So let's go ahead and let's check this edge. Edge is fine still. This edge is fine. That's okay. In fact, let's be anal about stuff and just move this over a little bit more. Again, you have to recenter that. And now I think this was still centered. Yeah, we're good. Now comes a fun part. We're gonna have to go ahead and make some pins that are going to come off the bottom of this brace, and these are actually going to fit into the base, because this, now we've made this, we're going to make 2 of these, by the way, but we need to make some pins that are going to fit into our base. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and we're going to use the same geometry that we have for this socket here. We're just going to go ahead and duplicate that geometry. I only really need one of these, so I'm just going to hold Control so I can enter my group, and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to delete one of those. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to move it, you know, so it's right there on the bottom. In fact, to make sure it's on the bottom, we're going to line this to the bottom of our brace like that. We're going to duplicate it. I'm going to make 3 of these. You can make 2. You can make more than that, but I'm just going to make 3. I think that's pretty good. As far as spacing goes, I'm not super concerned about making it exact, having some exact spacing from the edge here, but we're just going to make sure that it's not like right next to this socket here, because, by the way, having this inside corner right here so close to this inside corner is going to make the whole piece just a little bit less, a little bit weaker, a little more delicate, and more prone to breaking just along this area. So we're going to make sure that this is in, you know, a significant distance. I'm going to take all these three things I've just now created. I'm going to space them out evenly. I'm going to group them together. I'm going to take that group now, and we're going to center that on this, on our brace, and we're pretty much good. This right here is pretty much how this is going to be. We're going to do a couple more things to it, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this entire set of objects. Duplicate it. We're going to move it down here, and now that I've moved it down, we're going to actually go ahead and we're going to use some Boolean operations, and we're going to pretty much union, or pretty much merge all of these objects together. Okay, so I'm going to click this guy, I'm going to hold Shift, and start clicking all of these objects here. By the way, you can't union groups in Inkscape. You have to select within the groups or ungroup the objects first. I'm going to go Path, we're going to go to Union, and boom, we have a situation. I like that. It makes me happy. Now, what we have here, I'm also going to take these guys right here. We're going to union those together. And so instead of going up to Path, I'm just using some of these hotkeys. You can sort of see these hotkeys here. I'm just using those. It makes life a little easier for me. So, hotkeys, we're going to subtract this, do the difference between those objects and this. And so now, by the way, if I were to take this over here, you can sort of see how it's transparent. Like that's not a rectangle on top of it. It's literally, these have been combined in some sort of way. You can sort of see, you can see the edge of the page right there, which is nice. We'll go back and I'm gonna just move that back to where it was. Now we're pretty good here. One thing, you see how I've made this, and I think I mentioned this earlier. We want 2 units of this, and we've made these sockets here. We're going to actually make a set of pins that will be able to fit inside of these sockets, inside of both of these sockets, and they are going to sort of fasten on all this geometry together. So we're going to use the same. We're going to use this geometry, the same geometry that we use for the pins. We're going to use it to make our so the same geometry we use for sockets. We're going to use it to make the pins. Getting tongue-tied here. So again, I just really want one of these. Okay, so I'm going to click this one. Actually, I'll just go ahead and delete it. I'll click this one. I'll delete it. I'll take this one here. Now we're talking about pins here. Laser cutter is going to cut something. All right, and even though it might look like it's just it's a very fine line. Yes, it is using a very fine line, but it's going to remove a little bit of material. And if I want to describe what that might look like, if I were to take this guy and we're going to put it here for a second. Imagine the actual cut is going to look something like that. When it actually is all said and done and it's cut out, the laser actually has some sort of width. And so what we're going to do is, if I were to make this pin the exact same width as the socket that I've already made, it's not going to fit snugly. It's gonna have a little bit of jiggle room, a little bit of wiggle room, and it'll be able to shift in there, and it's not gonna really hold this in a really good press fit way. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna add just a very small amount of width to this pin. So I'm gonna add 0.02 inches. Let's sort of see it's grown just a little bit, and because this is going to be going through two different objects, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to make the height of this 0.5. Instead of 0.25, we're going to make it 0.5. That way it gets to go through 2 thicknesses of material, which I'll have. So this is great. We're actually coming along here pretty well. You can sort of see we need 2 of these, so I'm going to duplicate this one really quickly. We have 2 of them. And let's move them out of the way so we can go to our next step. Now our next step, this is great. This here will probably work. If you want to make things a little bit stronger, I kind of want to cover this. If you want to make things a little bit stronger, it's pretty important, I'd say, to reduce the number of sharp inside corners that you have on your design. Also, I see a little issue that we have going on here. You see how we move this up here? We're gonna have a little situation where this is not gonna go all the way into the hole properly, into the slot that we're gonna make in the base, because you can sort of see how this the surface is up here and extends to here. So we're gonna have to fix that in just 1 second. And to fix that, all we're really gonna do is we're going to just extend that over to there. That looks a little bit better. I'm happier with that. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to remake this part. Sorry about that, guys. Sort of just missed that right there. So again, we're just going to recenter this, recenter that. And actually, I don't even need this. Let's get rid of that. Let's move this back up there. We're going to duplicate this one, hold that down there, select everything except for this. In fact, I'm going to move and extend these just to make sure they overlap. Union those, ungroup them, union them together. This guy right here, Control-Shift-G, Control-Shift+, Control-Shift-, boom. We're back to where we started. But we learned something, so it's not for waste. We didn't really waste that time. Nice. So, as I was saying, we want to reduce these sort of inside corners. This right here, this could give us some little issue, because this is just going to make this letter just a little bit weaker than the rest. And you don't have to do it for all corners. I'm really going to make sure I do it for these corners that really come to a point. So the C and the O, and maybe even part of this W here, that are a little bit acute angles here. We're going to see if we can just reduce that corner, the sharpness of that corner. So I'm going to duplicate this just in case I do want to not do that. I'll keep a copy of one of these guys right here. And I'm going to zoom in right here, and I'm going to go to my Edit Nodes tool. I'm going to click this guy. You can sort of see all the points that make up this object here. I'm going to double click here. I'm going to double click there. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to do that there. I'm going to do double click here. I'm going to double click there. Here. And there. By the way, this is gonna why might you not want to do this? You might not want to do this because this is going to change the actual shape, the actual look of your part. You know, it's not going to look exactly the same. So just be mindful of that. That it's not going to look exactly the same after this, because we're going to change the shape of these letters. It's going to look like they're sort of glued down, like in some sort of muck or something like that. Sort of melting into there. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to delete this point right here, if it'll let me. Let's select it, delete. No, it's not going to work. Maybe we'll delete this one. Hold on 1 second, what's going on with INKSCAPE? Let's try it here. Delete, there we go. That was bizarre. And just like so. That's not too bad. I'm just gonna curve that just like that. And now we have this better situation. This inside here, I mean, this is sort of braced. This rear can't really extend. So pretty much what we're doing is we're keeping. Imagine if something were to happen, you were to push from left to right on this C. It's gonna sort of flex because it is made out of real material that doesn't have it doesn't have infinite stiffness. It's gonna flex just a little bit over here, and doing that, you're gonna create some sort of stress over here. You're gonna try to create a stress right in this corner, and it's going to be more prone to breakage if you have a nice sharp corner. So, but over here you don't really have that situation because this right here is fastened on the edge of there, so you're not going to have that as much. Same thing we're going to do here. Hopefully this will let me do it now. There we go. And we're just going to drag that. I'm holding control, by the way, while I'm moving this, so it moves it pretty much along the like the line that it was already facing, or whatever that means, or what I'm saying here. And we're gonna do the same thing there. How about that? There we go. That doesn't look too bad. That looks pretty balanced. Pretty happy with that. I said we're gonna do it on the C, and we're gonna do a little bit on this W here. Let's zoom in here. This is just going to make it a little bit stronger. By the way, we are doing multiple layers. Okay, we are using multiple layers, so that's going to give it a little bit of strength. This right here is important, especially if you're doing like a single layer. So imagine if this was just, if we weren't doing multiple layers for the text to make it any thicker than than just the single thickness of our material. Because then it would be pretty thin. There wouldn't be that much material to resist any sort of push if you were to try to push on it. But we'll do it for the sake of this tutorial here. So there we go. Look at that. That looks pretty good. Doesn't really change it that much. In fact, let's go ahead and see if we can compare these two. We already compare these two and see what this looks like. This is the one that doesn't have any of those corners, those rounded corners. This has the rounded corners. I mean, it doesn't look too much different. I don't think it looks that bad. I think it looks pretty good, actually. And now that we know it's stronger, it makes it almost look a little better. By the way, checking this out, this is another reason to use the brace. I mean, look at that M right there. Imagine if we were to try to assemble this M by itself. First of all, you have this serious sharp corner inside there. And that would provide a little bit of an issue when it comes to rigidity, And you have this very thin line right there, which again is going to provide some challenges when you're talking about rigidity and strength and all that. But regardless, neither here nor there. We're done with this part. Okay, we're gonna make two of them. So let's move this off the page. I'm gonna just duplicate this. We're gonna make two of these guys, and we're gonna make sure we keep these ones with them somewhere. I'm gonna put this guy here. I'm gonna put it here because it's gonna make so we don't have to use as much material. Move that over there. Now it's time to make the base. Fairly simple, straightforward situations going on here. Base obviously has to be wider, or should I say, than the letters in the brace, just so it looks good. What we're gonna do is, I'm gonna change the color of it first of all. I'm going to center this on my text. Okay, you can sort of see here that this brace is not dead center in the middle of my text, in the middle of this in the middle of the base, and that's literally just because we moved the brace over from the left just a little bit because of the overhang of the W. We were going to see a little bit too much of the brace than we wanted to. So this is fine. I'm happy with it. let's actually put it to a round, an even number as far as the width. So we're gonna make this 12 inches wide. Okay, let's go ahead and recenter that. Looks good. And we're gonna go ahead and we're going to put this. We're gonna superimpose this base. Well, this brace onto the base. So I'm gonna duplicate that, and we're just gonna center that on the horizontal axis over this base here, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna change the color. I'm gonna put it white. We don't have to change the color, but I'll put it white just for the time being because we're gonna superimpose some other things on top of it. Yeah, looks pretty good. Next thing that we have to think about is we need to superimpose this structure right here. These pins, we're gonna make some sockets, some complementary sockets right inside of this slot here. So I'm gonna duplicate that whole unit, and we're going to justify this. We're gonna move this to the bottom of this slot. Okay. And then we're gonna duplicate this one again. Actually, before we do that, let's not duplicate it. I duplicated them already, so let's delete that duplicate. We're going to change this thing up a little bit. Remember how we said we talked about the kerf? I didn't call it kerf, but that's what it's called. The width of the laser cutter, how it's going to take away some material. That's why we made the pins a little bit wider than they are than the actual width of the socket here. We're going to do the same thing for this socket, except instead of making these pins wider, because we don't have any pins here, we're going to make this socket just a little bit more narrow. And so let's go ahead and we'll do that. I said I was not going to duplicate it, but I will duplicate it. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to ungroup that duplicate. I'm going to deselect my center socket, and we're going to delete the rest of them. This one I'm going to change the color to some random color, contrasting color, so I can see what we're about to do here. And we're going to make this, we're going to subtract 0.015 inches. I didn't even type anything. Goodness. Minus 0.015. There we go. Looks great. I'm going to center that on. I'm going to center that on the vertical axis relative to that socket that's right behind it. Check that out. You can see this border. Now, by the way, you see how we're using two different numbers here. We're using 0.015 for the slot, or sorry, for the pin that we made over here. No, 0.15 for this socket pin assembly, and then 0.02 for this. And the difference between this is when we are actually assembling this, you can take a hammer or a mallet or something like that and really just go ham and hammer those pins directly into this, and you're not going to have any issue with strength, rigidity, really, because you're hitting flat against the surface. But when we're dealing with this one over here, this piece right here is going to fit into this assembly, and one of the only ways to really get at this is to apply pressure from the top here. And in doing that, you don't want to have to apply too much pressure, or you could theoretically start to break or damage this text and this graphic here. So that's why we reduced it by not as much, so that the friction that you'll experience when actually assembling this would be a little bit less. So it would go in a little bit easier. I like this. This looks pretty good. I'm going to delete that original one that's behind it. And I'm going to take this guy right here. Because we're making two of these, imagine having two of these side by side. It's pretty much like, it's exactly the same actually as having a one socket that's 0.5 inches. tall or whatever that you want to say. Not deep, but wide or whatever. I'm going to take this guy right here. Can I select him? There we go. We're going to duplicate it. And we are going to center it on the other two sockets. We're going to delete those original ones, so those are just placeholders, so we can actually align everything exactly where it needs to be. And we are pretty much, we're getting to the point where we're almost finished here. The next thing I'm going to do is we need some way to hold this piece right here, to hold the multiple layers of the base, because we'll have probably, we'll have at least 3 layers of the base, because we said we wanted to hide this, right? We said we wanted to hide this whole brace, this whole brace here, and this brace is 1/2 inch thick, and then we have these additional pins here, and those are 1 thickness of the material thick, and that means our entire thickness is going to be 0.75, 3/4 of an inch thick. So that means we're going to have at least, we know that we're going to have at least 3 units of this whole situation. They're going to be different, but we'll still have 3 of them. So we need to connect. We need to make a pin and socket situation that's going to be able to connect 3 pieces. So very simply, I'm going to take this guy. I'm using this one because it actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to use this guy. I'm going to use one of these. Duplicate them. I'm going to put, let's say, one right here. Make another one. Put one right there. Let's just line them up like that. I like that. That's fine. Now we need to make sure that these are. This is not super important, but like for the sake of being consistent and because you want to be balanced, you want to balance things out pretty well. I'm going to make sure that this piece right here is the same distance from the edge as this piece is from this edge right here. So we'll take both of them. We're going to group them together. I'm going to basically I'll select this back the base, our main base piece as well, and we're going to center all of those guys. Just center them along there, just like so. Nice, just like that. Now you can sort of see that this root is dead smack in the middle, along the horizontal axis at least. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to move another one of them over here. I'm actually going to put it like right here. How about that? That's not too bad. Take this one. We're going to move it over here. I'm going to make a duplicate of this. We're going to put it right there in the center. By the way, I think this is probably overkill as far as the number of sockets that we're going to be using. But we're going to put 6. I mean, it is 12 inches long, and depending on the material that you're using, it might be a little bit warped. The material might have some natural warp to it, and so you want to be able to make sure that you're pinning it down in enough places that warp is sort of is mitigated, especially since I'm designing this as press fit, so we don't want to have to use any glue or adhesives to sort of make those two surfaces together. So we have this. I think we just space these. We're going to space these out evenly. We're going to group them together. I'm going to space this out evenly in relation to our base piece. Looks pretty good. Now you might be looking at this and saying, well, this isn't really quite balanced, but it kind of is. Okay, at least the stuff that you'll be able to see, well, when you're displaying this this piece, because this part right here is underneath the text, and the text is balanced, so you're not going to see any of this. So to be honest with you, this entire assembly will more or less look like this. Okay, so we're pretty good here. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm looking at this. If I were to cut this out, remember we're going to have 3 thicknesses of this material, and even if we didn't, we're gonna have the sharp corner here. I'm not a huge fan of these sharp corners like this, unless you have to have it, unless it's like part of your aesthetic. It's not really part of my aesthetic here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna round these corners here. All I did to do this, by the way, in INKSCAPE is if you double click the object and you haven't like taken the object and converted it to path, it's still in the sort of the same settings that it was designed in. And one of the options you can do is you can sort of round these corners by dragging this this little this little circle down or to the right or left or whatever it is. You can make this sort of just go ahead and fill that edge just a little bit. Looks good. I like it. It just takes the edge off, makes it not sharp to hold or whatever you're dealing with. So I'm happy with this. This is how I'm pretty good with this. In this case, though, we're gonna need 6 more of these. So I'm gonna make 6 more of these. Duplicate this. Can we fit one over there? We can. Nice. Can we fit one? Oh, can we fit one here? We can fit one there. So you have 2 more. And do we need 3 more? No. We need 5 more. Duplicate that. We're gonna put that there. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need 1 more. And this is just. I could have just duplicated this, all those 4 and just moved it down. I don't know why I didn't do that. Anyways, we're good. Now we need to differentiate our layers. Okay. I'll duplicate this. Okay. And by the way, you can sort of see how I've kept this. I made a copy of each of these. And the reason I made a copy of it is, imagine if for some reason we want to change this, you know, we want to, you know, make the text different or do something else with it. With these, it's a lot more difficult to do because this is all one object. You know, this isn't text anymore. This is just an object to INKSCAPE. Now to my drawing program, it just thinks of it as an object as opposed to the original text. And same thing for these. I can't really move these around as much anymore. I can't easily change the shape and size and positioning of these. I mean, you can a little bit, but you know, it's a little bit. It's not the same thing. You know. So that's why I like to keep this. This is like my edit, my source file within this design file, if you will. So I'm going to take this duplicate right here, and we're going to need 2 unique versions of this. Okay. First one is the version that's going to have a slot. If you imagine that if I have a slot that's going to fit this. It's going to hide this structure right here. We're not going to need any of these because it's a slot. Imagine if I cut that out and I go in and cut these guys out as well in that same thing. You know, you're not going to see any difference. The whole thing will fall out, so there's no reason to keep that there. So this is good. This is one of our pieces. We're happy with this. The next piece is this piece, and this is the piece that's going to sort of fit. That has those sockets on that's going to fit these pins, and that obviously does not have the main slot that's hiding that brace. It's just going to have that. We're pretty much done here. Now, just like we did it to this, you see how we used our Boolean operations to sort of combine these objects together. We're going to do the same thing over here. By the way, you don't have to do this step. We had to do it over here because we needed to add these fillets to these inside corners. You don't have to do this here, but I like to do it because it just makes manipulating these things a little bit easier. And you know, when you're sending to the machines and stuff like that, it's not separate objects. It sees them as one and makes it easier to process, and the machine gets happier. Okay. Anyways, so let's duplicate these. Did I duplicate them? I haven't duplicated them yet. Duplicate them. And we're going to take this group, we're going to ungroup it, we're going to union it together, and we're going to subtract it from our background object right there. Same thing here. Take all these, ungroup these groups, union them, and subtract them from our background. We are happy. We're cooking with gas, peoples. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just move all this off the page. Now we're actually pretty done. We're done here. Only thing we have left to do is prepare our laser cutting file. In order to do this, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I'm moving everything, you know, keeping the spacing between all the objects as small as possible, moving them so they're connecting to each other as much as possible. And looking at this, I think we're pretty good. By the way, when you're doing laser cutting and stuff like that, sometimes for some reason, some machines, the 0 point, like a lot of times the 0 point is like right up here, but in reality, you know, like the 0 point might not actually be right there. It might be like right over here or something like that. And in doing that, if we were to take this entire thing and move this like right up here, it might not cut properly, because it might start trying to cut like this. And imagine this is that our page is the actual size of our like bed area. You'll end up chopping off parts of your shape, or you know, sometimes, you know, let's say if you have chips or irregularities on the edge, you know, you're gonna end up seeing those in your final design, which is you're not going to actually want. So I like to give this some sort of, you know, buffer, some sort of margin around this. So there we go. I'm pretty happy about that. And the margin size I use maybe about, you know, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, sometimes 1/2 inch, depending on the material I'm using and the way it looks. Now this looks pretty great. I'm pretty stoked about this. One last thing that, well, the last thing, well, a couple other things we're going to do is I'm going to make a little line. Take a line here, and I'm going to make this line just like this. We might never actually cut this line, but what this line is for is to imagine if we're dealing, because since we are dealing with birch plywood, you have to understand your material now. Imagine we're dealing with birch plywood. And birch plywood tends to warp. It's a little bit finicky. And what that basically means is, as we're dealing with a laser, and laser cutters have to have, there's only a certain focal length in which they're efficient. Imagine you have a board, and again, we said this was 12 inches. So this entire thing is at least 24 inches long. That's a lot of space to allow something to warp. So, you know, you might have a height difference of like 1/2 an inch maybe between these two parts if you have a really badly warped board, or like the middle might be bowed up or the edges might be bowed. And what we're doing here is we're adding some lines here, and we're gonna save these as a different file, and those lines will pretty much allow us to cut our board in a way that so that we can sort of get rid of some of those some of that warp. Because if you can imagine, let's say if we have a warp here, a big warp here, if I chop this up, you have smaller pieces, they're gonna lie a little bit flatter. So that's what I'm gonna do right here. I like that. I'm going to make this line here extend, not quite as far. I'm going to make this extend down a little bit more. And by the way, I didn't make a rectangle. I could have made a rectangle and deleted one of the sides. I'm not making a rectangle because I don't want to have to cut, you know, I don't want it to cut all the way up and along the edge of the material. I just want it to cut inside the material. So that's how we're going to do that. That looks good. This looks good. Hold it down just a little bit. And let's pull this down just a little bit as well. I'm happy with this. Now what we'll do is, so this is great. This right here, this is how we want to cut things. this right here is representative of what the machine will actually end up cutting. However, imagine if I wanted in the same document to prepare another cutting file. It's going to be hard for me to do that without moving this around, without shifting this, and without taking this off the page. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to make a box. That's the width and height of our material or our page. We're going to center it to our page. We're going to take it and we're going to send it to the bottom, then behind everything, and we're going to duplicate whatever is on our page, including that box. So move this box over here. Let's change the color. That's pretty harsh red right there. Let's make it like a super light gray. You can still sort of see it against the white of the background. And the reason why we're doing this is that now I still have my one of my cuts. This is chilling right here. We have it, and if I wanted to, I'm actually gonna group them together. If I wanted to cut this again, I could just, or to save another file that looks very similar to this, I could just take this guy right here and center this on the page again, and now I can go save this as my PDF file or whatever it is, and it'll cut fine. We'll move this off again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start to save our distinct files. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to delete these lines. Take everything here. I'm going to turn it white. Oh, still grouped. Turn it white and give it a line. This line we're going to give it is a very thin red line. Laser cutters, at least the ones I use, they like to use red thin lines as their vector cutting lines. When I say thin, we're talking about 0.001 inches, very, very thin. That's great. And then let's make sure that this box right here is turned white. Everything, there's stuff there, don't worry. We're good. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to save this file right here. Let's save it on let's put it on the desktop. You can put it on the desktop. I'm going to save it as centerpiece, as welcome actually. Welcome.pdf. That's great. And now we're going to make another duplicate of this. And this duplicate here, we're going to save as, ungroup this again, select everything except for these flattening lines that we've made. And we're going to take these, give those the same treatment, turn them red, and we're going to turn them, give them the thin red line treatment. Okay, very good. This box here, wait, what happened to the box? Yikes, looks like I deleted the box somehow. I did. Have to undo that. Let's do this one more time. Click this. Actually click everything and deselect the ones you want to keep. There we go. Much better. Red line. Control Shift F, and let's dictate that, turn that to inches. Let's put that as 0.01. Very good. Take this box, turn it white now. I mean, I could go ahead and just move this over here. Another thing that you can do is just happen. Let's click out of this, Control Shift D. Actually, what is happening? What is this? This is weird. I'm not used to seeing that. let's go to our document properties here. And we're going to resize our page to the content. Now, because this box that we have behind it is the exact size that we need it to be, we're good. So now this is our new page. It's right behind here. You can see it. Now we can save this again as PDF. By the way, INKSCAPE, when you save this as PDF, it just saves the page. So, and we're going to call this thing right here, welcome flatten. Great. So now, to be honest with you, we're done. I'm going to go ahead just so we can see these things. I'm going to turn them back to gray so you can differentiate between them. But we're all set. So that's pretty much how you do it. What I will end up doing is I'll post I'm going to go ahead and probably render this in Fusion 360. And then I will post that as well, so you'll be able to see that as well. Alright, hope you like this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was useful for you guys. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, be sure to subscribe so you can see more cool content, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.